Fortune's Progeny, The Ascent, Episode 19, The Presentation. The 2 weeks leading up to the review went by in a blur of spreadsheets and coffee. Trent spent his days buried in sustained numbers and his nights staring at his slides. Public speaking wasn't his thing. The thought of standing in front of the board, defending his ideas against Gamma's cutthroat metrics, kept a steady knot of nerves in his stomach. But he'd spent the last year learning that pure preparation could mimic confidence. He ran his lines in his room, keeping his voice down so he didn't wake his housemates. He muttered them on the bus, watching the city pass. He paced Maya's living room while she watched from the couch.
Stop. You're over-rehearsing. It sounds like a speech, not a conversation.
It's a defense, Maya. It's not supposed to be a conversation.
The best defenses look easy, Trent. Like you know the room so well, you can afford to relax.
Trent let that sink in. She was right. He was white-knuckling the script. On the morning of the review, he put on the gray suit from Violin & Son. It fit perfectly, clean and structured, without feeling stiff. Looking in the mirror, he didn't see a nervous kid trying to prove something. He saw someone who belonged there. The 6 a.m. car ride was completely silent. The financial district was just waking up, pale sunlight hitting the massive glass towers. The Aethelgard building loomed ahead, the family logo etched sharp into the steel front. The waiting room was exactly as Silas had described, quiet, empty, with a single chair and a glass of water he didn't touch. Through the thick double doors, he could hear the low murmur of the board already talking. Trent stood in the center of the room, taking slow, deep breaths to level his pulse. The lock clicked. The liaison stepped out.
The board will see you now, Mr. Ashford.
Trent nodded and walked through. The founder's room wasn't the cold, high-tech space he'd imagined. It was lined with the same rich oak paneling he'd seen in old photos of Alistair's workshop, smelling of wax and old paper. A long boardroom table took up the center of the room, with about 15 people sitting around it, their faces half hidden in the dim light outside the center stage. At the far head of the table, he could just make out the upright posture of an elderly woman. Eleanor. She sat straight-backed and watchful. Trent walked up to the podium. He laid his single index card down and stepped to the side, standing right in the spotlight where they could all see him. It was no time to hide behind the lectern. He looked past the glare, straight into the dark.
Trustees of the Aethelgard Group. My name is Trent Ashford. A year ago, I thought my biggest problem was $42,000 in student debt. I was wrong. My biggest problem was a lack of discipline. The Progeny protocol challenged me to fix the debt by fixing my habits. What follows is the proof of that process and the blueprint for what comes next.
He spoke for 15 minutes. He didn't rush. He took them through the whole story. The first $1,000 emergency fund, the momentum of the debt avalanche, the steady growth of the index fund, and then the bigger projects, Greenwise, the Atelier, and the Highland Sanctuary. He presented the sustained data, the JAR library's quick win, the waste audit's ongoing work, the slow but steady improvement in customer sentiment. He didn't attack Gamma's aggressive strategy. He just showed them his own as a real alternative, one built on staying power, trust, and long-term value.
You asked me to learn personal stewardship. I did. But the real lesson is that these principles don't change when you scale them up. The exact same habits that clear a personal debt, ruthless prioritization, systematic execution, patience, and creating real value, are the habits that protect an empire. I'm not standing here as a finished product. I'm here as validation of a working system, one that builds solid foundations and protects lasting value. Thank you for your consideration.
He stood by the podium, hands relaxed at his sides, keeping his eyes steady on the room. The silence stretched out. He didn't fidget or look down at his card. He just breathed. Finally, Eleanor's voice came out of the shadows.
Thank you, Trent. Please step back out to the waiting room while we deliberate.
Trent nodded, turned, and walked out, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. The presentation was over. The data was on the table, and now it was up to them. The waiting room felt completely still, the only sound being the faint hum of the building's AC. 5 minutes went by, then 10, then 20. The fact that they were taking their time was a good sign, he told himself. A quick choice meant an easy no. A long debate meant they were actually wrestling with it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Maya.
How did it go?
Still waiting. They're deliberating.
Good. You did the work. Let them talk.
He put his phone away and breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The silence pressed in, but he did not press back. He waited. After 27 minutes, the door opened. It was not the liaison. It was Silas.
They've reached a decision. Follow me.
Trent followed Silas back into the boardroom. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. The board members weren't just shadows anymore. He could see them watching him, some looking thoughtful, others unreadable. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, her hands folded. Trent took his spot next to the podium.
Trent Ashford. The board has reviewed your numbers, your presentation, and your performance over the past year. Your grasp of the core principles is clear, and your work with the businesses is solid. But this role requires looking at the bigger picture. There are concerns in this room. Some worry your approach is too slow for a fast market. Others wonder if your focus on stability means you lack the killer instinct for aggressive growth. Because of that, we are not naming an heir today.
The words hit hard. A sudden, cold weight dropped in his stomach. He'd lost. They wanted a rocket, not a foundation.
Instead, the board has voted to start a final integration phase. Effective right now, you are appointed as Special Executive Officer to the CEO of Aethelgard Holdings. You'll be given direct control over the portfolio you just managed. Greenwise, the restructured Atelier, the Highlands model, and Sustain. You will have a seat at the strategy table. And you will have exactly 1 year to prove your philosophy can drive real growth alongside stability. Do you accept?
I accept.
Welcome to the business, Mr. Ashford. Your first briefing is tomorrow at 8 a.m. Silas will show you out.
Walking down the hall behind Silas, the reality of it started to set in. He hadn't been handed a crown. He'd been handed a bigger toolbox and a much steeper mountain to climb. The real work, the transition from fixing things to building a legacy, building wealth and giving, was just getting started.